New changes to real estate coming in August, they really highlight the importance of a buyer's agent, don't they?
They do.
Absolutely. So we are here with Amy from Grace Group Realty. It's Brad, the mortgage guy. As you know, we're going to talk about buyer's agency and some of the changes coming to the industry. So anyways, Amy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us. We've got some changes coming up, it seems, no?
Yep. Starting August 17th, if you want to work with a realtor as a buyer, you have to sign an agreement with us stating that we represent you, and there's all sorts of stuff we have to add to that agreement, including compensation.
Okay, so that is new in some states, but not new necessarily everywhere, right? Connecticut, for instance, had this buyer's agency agreement. So it may be new, but it's also old, right?
Yeah, we've always had a buyer's agency agreement, but I think most realtors put on there, we will get paid whatever the seller's agent puts on as a co-brokerage fee. Okay. So most people didn't have that agreement signed. We would have an agency disclosure agreement signed, which is what was required, but an exclusive buyer's agreement was never mandatory.
Okay.
Now it is.
And while the fee for buyer's agency kind of was always negotiable, this just makes it far more apparent that it is in fact.
Yeah, I mean, commission's always been negotiable. Buyers typically, at least in our area of Massachusetts, the buyer really didn't pay that commission. It was paid from the seller by that agreement that they had with their agent. And now it's different. Now it could possibly mean that buyers are going to have to come up with some extra money to pay to be represented.
So, I mean, that's important. So that's really, from a buyer's perspective, probably the main change that's coming about is that they could be in a position where historically they've never had to pay anything towards their buyer's agents, right? But now they may have to pay something towards their buyer's agency.
Typically, I know in my case, when I worked with a buyer, I would say as a benefit that it's great to have a buyer representation because you don't even have to pay us. We still represent you, but we get paid from the seller's brokerage.
Now it could be different. I think a lot of people, when they bought a house or they sometimes even sold a house, which both of them seem foolish to me being in the industry, but a lot of people were just like, oh, you know what, my cousin just got his license yesterday and he got it so I could buy a house and he could help me buy a house. And that's the only deal he's ever going to do in his life. Like they thought that was a great idea, right? Like, probably not, right?
Yeah. You need somebody with experience, especially now if you're going to have to maybe pay them. You're going to want somebody that represents you with experience, that's been in the business for a long time, that's come through all the pitfalls that we go through in a real estate transaction. It's not simply A to Z straight line. It is ups and downs getting there.
All right, so I think a lot of buyers are thinking right now when they're seeing some of the stuff in the news, if they're paying attention, a lot of people are even really paying too much attention to this, but some are. And when they're sitting down with a real estate agent to buy a house, they're going to have to start paying attention to this. So I think a lot of people are thinking, man, buying a house is just getting so far out of reach. You know, the prices are up. The interest rates are a little higher than they've been in the past several years. Historically still pretty low, but still higher than they've been the past several years. And they're wondering like, shoot, now I have this extra money I've got to pay. So they're not always necessarily going to have to pay that, correct? I mean, isn't that where you come into play in negotiating?
Exactly. What's going to be a little something extra that we have to do is determining whether or not there is a compensation offered by the seller to a buyer's agent. And if not, how do we get paid? You know, we don't work for free. So you have to put something on this exclusive buyer agreement that states that you're going to make a certain amount of money, and it could be, you know, I require that I make at least 2%, and maybe what you end up making from the seller's brokerage is a 1.5%, then the buyer would have to come up with that additional 0.5%.
Okay.
All that NAR has said is what we need to have on these agreements, but they haven't really said more than that as to like how they want them to be formatted. There's no standard form yet.
Sure. Okay. And I know the local boards and stuff are working on those standard forms. We'll start to see some standardization come about there. So it's funny that you say a buyer's agent has to get paid, which is obvious, right? People going to buy a house, if they showed up to work and didn't get paid for their work, they wouldn't be buying a house because they wouldn't have income. So, I mean, obviously that has to be. And I kind of laugh at it when you say that because the people who are out there, you know, trying to get a discount on this, that, or other thing are probably getting what they're paying for, right?
100%.
So,
Your cousin that just got licensed to represent you is probably at the discounted price.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's areas around us that have crumbling foundations, for instance. There's areas around us that are high for radon. I mean, what are some of the things that that a buyer's agent brings to the table that you feel is really important to have a buyer's agent?
Negotiation skills, knowing the market. I know that certain towns in Western Massachusetts have high water tables. So when I see a sump pump at a house, I'm not going to freak out as much because I know this town has high water tables. So it's a preventative measure to have a sump pump.
Sure.
These are all these things that buyer's agents do for buyers. Most of the time, we're acting as therapists, we're counselors, we're holding hands through a process, not just simply, hey, let's go look at this house and put in an offer. It's how do we negotiate this offer? What is the seller's motivation? We have to find that out. That's our job, is to make sure we know as much as we can about a property, including why is the seller selling, and try to make it so that they get the best deal possible and are protected. And if you go through a seller's agent to do that, they're not looking out for you, looking out for the seller.
And it's not just negotiating price, though, is it, right?
No, you're negotiating pretty much to the end. I mean, you're negotiating if the inspection doesn't go right, what they're going to repair. If the appraisal doesn't come at the appraised value, how are you going to negotiate that? Who's going to pay the difference, So it's literally, you're negotiating from beginning to the end of the transaction.
And I'm sure on the closing day, you never have problems on closing day where you walk through the house and something's wrong, right?
Of course you do.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're literally, like you said, negotiating to the end. You walk through that house and the credenza that was supposed to be left, or the trash that was supposed to be brought out of the house, or something that somebody might not notice, a mechanical of some sort is not working. You're there kind of
I stuck wheelbarrows in the trunk of my car to get it out of a house so that the buyer was happy with a certain... I mean, there's things you do to make it happen. And yeah, it's our job to reach out to the attorneys before they go and sign all the paperwork to say, this wasn't done. How are we going to repair this? How are we going to fix this? And make sure the buyer's okay with whatever they come up with as a solution.
All right. So talk back for a minute back to a buyer paying for a buyer's agent, right? And that sounds fair, right? They have a buyer's agent representing them, paying for that. Sounds fair. In the past, while a seller paid for it, it was really built into the price.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what I say all the time. The buyers have been paying real estate commission forever, if you think about it, right? Because when you meet with a seller to price a home, you're pricing it based on the commission that they're going to have to pay, right? So the buyer who purchases that house is buying that house at that price. The seller considered commission in that price. So they're the ones really paying it because they're paying that higher price for the house.
Okay, so going forward then, you still can do that. Even if a seller's not offering any kind of compensation to cover that up front, you as the agent, again, your negotiation skills are able to go in and actually say, hey, we're going to put it into the price, which is the same as...
Really, yeah.
Right? It's the same as it's always been.
Pretty much.
Okay, so in reality, it's kind of like there's a difference in the way this is being communicated to buyers and sellers now.
Yeah, I mean, NAR is saying that the whole reason that they're doing this is to be more transparent, but in my opinion, it's making us have to take a detour to find out exactly what the compensation is going to be. And that's not, to me, transparent. That's literally calling every listing that my buyer wants to see to say, hey, are you offering a buyer's agent compensation? And if not, okay, now my buyer's got to figure out how are we going to roll in that commission into my loan.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, just on the surface doesn't make sense to say we're being more transparent by providing less information, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of silly statement to make, but that you're right. That is what ultimately they're saying.
And in the past, as a seller's agent, if I received an offer from a buyer's agent that asked me to throw in an extra commission because they weren't satisfied with what they was disclosed on the MLS, to me, that was a deterrent to that buyer's offer because you already know what you're making. It's disclosed on the MLS. Don't try and come back and ask for more. You showed the house based on that disclosure. Okay. And now that's not going to be there.
Now, do you think that sellers are going to still offer up to pay for a buyer's agent?
I think that if we as listing agents educate the sellers the benefits of making sure that they do offer compensation to a buyer's agent, then yeah, it'll probably be okay. I don't think that sellers are going to reduce their price all of a sudden because they don't have to pay a buyer's agent. They're still going to price it the same way they would as if they did.
Do you think the sellers are going to continue to offer buyer's agency compensation? And what do you think the benefits to a seller offering that are?
The benefit would be that they open up the market to more buyers. If they're still offering a buyer's agent compensation, there's going to be more buyers that they're going to attract to their property.
That just makes sense. This is like the supply and demand curve, right? Like you want more eyeballs on your property. And what you're saying is offering that allows more eyeballs on your property.
Yep.
I can speak to that by saying that a large majority of buyers that are out there don't have the funds to pay for that buyer's agent. And it's not all your first-time home buyers. It's your high net worth people too. I had somebody the other day call me up. This was somebody probably worth 20, 25 million, a lot of money, right? In their retirement age, looking to buy a house, but to pull out extra Yeah, they're not liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, to pull out an extra 50 grand was going to cost them 100 grand, right? So why do they want to do that? No, I want to build it into the price of the house. I want the seller to pay for that because exactly, it's not liquid. So you have some sellers who are like, well, if they're buying my house, they can afford it.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case. They can afford it, but a lot of smart buyers still want it built into the price.
Yeah.
Also, still want it built into the price because when they go and sell it, the capital gains on it later on down the road too.
I mean, it's closing costs, it's commission, it's homeowners insurance, it's all these things that are rolled into buying a home, and now you're tacking on, thousands of dollars in commission. It's a lot to ask a buyer to come up with that.
Yeah, and so I think what you're saying is this is why you hire a real estate agent anyways, right? To get the most number of eyeballs on your house. Right?
Yep.
Because of the marketing, because of the access to all the buyers that are out there, right? You're hiring a real estate agent to sell your house. And if you want to get highest offers on your house, I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is offering that actually increases the number of potential buyers and therefore increases the amount you're going to get for your house.
Exactly, yes. And you're going to price your house based on what you're going to be willing to pay that buyer's agent anyways, and you'll get that price.
It's funny because you're right. It's 100% of the time the buyer's paying for the commission. If they came together at $500 and they needed to pay $15,000 in a fee, right? If they came together at $500 and the seller refused to pay anything, guess what? That buyer would have gave you $515 if you paid for it.
Exactly.
Right? Or if you came together at $515 and you're paying the commission, it's the same thing if you went $500 with the buyer paying their own, except the buyer's out 15 grand extra. So at the end of the day, the buyer's paying for it no matter what. Okay.
It's our job as realtors to talk to the sellers as sellers agents to really emphasize the importance of keeping that model in place.
So I think really the big change here is educating the seller, actually more so than even the buyer. The buyer, yes, absolutely, they have to buy a house, but they've always had closing costs. And now this is just part of what needs to be in there. And maybe there's a little extra they have to pay, maybe not. I don't, it's going to be case to case, but I think it's really important for strong listing agents to educate their sellers that this is something that no matter what is getting paid by the buyer anyway. It's just either built into the price or it's not.
Exactly. Price your home with that included, and it's just a lot less that you'll have to worry. You get more buyers attracted to your home, and it's a lot less negotiation we have to worry about in the back end when it's already up front and disclosed in there.
All right, so I'm going to buy a house. How would I go about finding a good realtor? What qualities would I look for in that realtor?
There's many ways. Sometimes you can ask friends and family, who have you worked with before? That's usually people get a lot of references. I get a lot of referrals from repeat business from other people, which is great. I would start with going online, go on realtor.com, Zillow, check reviews, and not just the first 4 or 5 reviews, like go deep dive into these realtors and figure out, is it consistent? Are the reviews coming in pretty much the same? And then you can kind of get an idea.
So we're doing this millennial wise. We're going referrals and then we're checking reviews. Like all the millennials, we love reviews. All right. Referral, reviews. What else?
I think you also have to have a good dynamic with the person. If you don't get along with them, you don't trust them. Even the first meeting, I know some people you can kind of read right from the start. Or the first phone conversation you have with them, you can kind of get a sense, is this someone I'm going to want to work with? Do they know what they're talking about? And that could be one of the other steps after you've done review searches and gotten referrals from them. But I think it's important to trust the person that what they're telling you is honest.
All right, so go with your gut is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
What qualities specifically, though, aside from gut, do you feel make somebody a good agent?
The communication is key. Number one, like they're getting back to you quickly. You're not missing out on a home because you can't get a hold of your realtor to schedule a showing. Knowing properties, knowing homes, knowing what this concrete issue is, knowing what lead paint is, having a knowledge of not just showing a home, but houses itself. And also having a realtor who's got another network of referrals that we can provide to you for other parts of the process. Lenders, because as you know, it's most of the time I'm getting a phone conversation to show a house and they haven't even talked to a lender yet.
Yeah.
So having a group of people that you can send to them and say, hey, these are 3 inspectors to call, or these are 3 lenders to reach out to.
I think that's really important. What you're getting when you're hiring an agent is you're actually getting their network, which is their attorney, their inspectors, their contractors, their lenders, everything.
Even afterwards, it's a lifelong. I tell my client, I want to be your realtor for life.
Sure.
I want to be your son's realtor. I don't want to just do this one transaction with you. I want to be the realtor you reach out to and that you tell all your friends about. And I still have people calling me 5 years later, hey, you had a painter. Yeah, here's the guy,
Yeah.
So I don't want to be at the closing table. That's the last time we talk. I want to
so that network is important. And actually, back to the buyer's agency comp, one of the things that I tell people right now is you've got to get that pre-approval, because there are programs where you could possibly even roll the cost of the buyer's agency into the loan as well. So there's actually that out there as well. So that's important. So, you're going to negotiate for the seller to pay it, but also you're going to connect them with a lender who's going to look to see if there's money out there to help with that as well. So that network is super, super important.
You don't necessarily need to be working for a huge company. As long as it's, it's somebody that you trust and that has had some experience in the business, I think, that goes a long way.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be someone from some crazy, huge, large firm. It can be someone that is, like we are a smaller company and all our agents are really good at what we do. We have a very family-like atmosphere and we're dedicated to representing our clients the best way we can.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll throw one more thing in there is that if you're talking to your agent and they're suggesting something, some kind of trick they're going to play on the seller, for instance, like we're not going to do inspections, but we're going to ask to go measure curtains and we're going to bring an inspector in. I've heard this stuff happen.
I don't do it. Karma's a bitch. But
absolutely. Absolutely. I would say if you're dealing with an agent that does that kind of thing, it feels good. You're like, oh yeah, they know the tricks. They don't know the tricks.
No, that's shady.
And in fact, it's shady. And in fact, when they did it the last time, now that listing agent knows that they do that. And guess what? They told all of their friends who are listing agents, and you're not getting offers accepted because of that type of stuff too.
I've literally had a seller's agent tell me that an offer of my clients was accepted because I wrote it up nicely, that it was legible, that I had all the forms included. You know what I mean? That makes a difference.
Which seems like that should be just an automatic standard, but it's not. You're absolutely right.
Nope. You get some chicken scratch.
But when you're neat and organized, they know the transaction's going to be neat and organized.
Yep, exactly.
Right? So that makes sense.
I guess another good characteristic to have as a buyer's agent, to have a little bit of an OCD tendencies, that really helps a lot.
Yeah. All I's dotted, T's crossed, or whatever we want to do. Okay. So I can say that I see oftentimes in multiple offer situations, I'll hear about somebody not getting it because they're like, well, they didn't get it. They had a little bit higher of an offer, but the last 3 deals I did with them, when they said that they were going to do inspections for informational purposes only, they didn't act in earnest on that. And they were minor things, and they were asking for light switches to be replaced, So like, again, you want to be dealing with somebody who's honest, right? Who's honest up front.
Says like what it is.
Yeah, says it the way it is, because if you're not, that could be why you're not getting your offers accepted too.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had offers presented to me as a listing agent and where I'm telling my sellers, okay, I've worked with this individual before and it did not go well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I fully disclose it, it's a couple $1,000s higher, but this is what happened in the last transaction, and reputation is key. And that's why it's important to look at reviews, talk to people about the people you're considering to represent you as a buyer.
I love it. All right, Amy, appreciate you talking to us here today, giving us a little bit of education. If you're out there and you are looking to buy a house, hit Amy up. Her information is on the screen. She'd love to help. I'm here always with any kind of financing. You're licensed in Mass,
Connecticut, and Florida.
And Florida. All right, Mass, Connecticut, and Florida. I'm licensed all those places as well. I'm licensed nationally except for Utah, because they want me to do 40 hours extra education, which
How much more do you need to know?
I've been procrastinating. I thought I did 25 years of education already, but that's what they want. So anyways, appreciate you. We're out of here. It's Brad, the mortgage guy. Thanks for listening.
See ya.